a new label was approved on the TTB for a brand new Eagle Rare product. This is Eagle Rare aged 12 years. The label has been approved as well that it is 95 proof. They didn't go for the full 101, that kind of heritage proof that Eagle Rare 17 moved to, which I think was a brilliant move to go back to what the original Eagle Rare brand was.
Will's upset about that, but honestly, it's like...
well, why move the proof at all for the 12-year if you're not going to... I mean, yeah, I know it's 11 proof points, but this isn't going to be something that's sitting on shelves. This is... this is going to be
snatched up.
This is going to be maybe a quarter release, maybe once a year. I don't know. I doubt it's a once a year because then you're competing with a BTAC and it's like a sub BTAC.
Well, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Release. I'm fine with the 95 proof because if you start getting, this is a 12-year at 101, I feel like it devalues.
The other one is 17 years old.
I know.
That's a whole different ball game.
Buffalo Trace is playing in a different way right now, just because most, if not all, their products, as far as their like heritage brands are concerned, they sell out wherever they go. Yes, you'll start seeing the Buffalo Traces a little bit more, maybe Eagle Rare, but it's going to take a long, long time, and I don't even know if it gets there, of having those higher-end products coming down.
Well, this is, I think, the problem that a lot of people have had with Buffalo Trace for a long time, is that they are very quick to release a slightly different label of one of their products when all of their products still sell out.
Yeah.
So
the people are pissed off about that, and they always are. It's like, why are you offering another Weller?
Exactly. I was going to say, why do you keep adding to the Weller line when Special Reserve and 107 aren't on every shelf?
Yeah.
Like, I can forgive you that 12 isn't everywhere.
Right.
But actually, if you're doing it right, instead of adding single barrel, CYPB, now the 18-year that's coming out
Don't touch that foolproof. That was a good one.
I love foolproof. I do love foolproof, but I wish
that one we're cool with adding.
Yeah, and that was a good thing. But at the time, then they added several more.
Yeah.
I wish they would get their supply chain in order and get these products back on the shelves. I think with the bourbon bust coming in a year, maybe a little more, then Buffalo Trace Eagle Rare will start being on the shelf again.
Yeah,
I
just think it's going to take longer for them to see that pain than I think some other brands, just because so many brands just fly off the shelf for them.
Yeah,
and so I think all of the people that haven't bought them in a while, as soon as they see it on the shelf, there's a whole demographic of people that used to just buy it. They refuse to buy it off secondary. They will see it in the store and they'll grab it. So I think you're going to see a period of time. I am starting to see like Baby Saz, Buffalo Trace. I am starting to see it more. Yes, both
just
of those.
Walking in. So hopefully,
Baby Saz has been on the shelves for a while.
I think that trend hopefully will continue, and that these products that are very drinkable, very cost effective for what they are, and very quality bourbon.
Now, Jack Daniel's is doing a similar thing, right, with their age series. Like, they're coming out with a 10, they're coming out with 12, 14, 18, 21 is the goal, right? And so I think it's a little different than that, because they have declared way on early, hey, we're going to start doing this. And hey, we've got a lot of product.
Yeah.
So it's like, when they start that process and it begins to increase and increase and increase and increase as far as the stock available for those aged products, then I think it'll kind of come together and make sense, because they do have, like, they don't outside of their distiller series, they don't necessarily offer new products much.
Yeah, and I think that is the difference, is that,
like, you have the Coy Hill, you have the special releases. Those are special releases. I'm talking about, like, you know, some staple annual things that are coming out, like Coy Hill, one and done. Actually, they circled back and it was the second
did it different, but it's a different thing. That one's a blend.
Yeah,
the others were single barrels. True. The other was like from this middle section. The difference between what Jack Daniel's is doing is that they are saying these are once a year releases. A lot of times Buffalo Trace doesn't say, like, Weller Single Barrel is a once a year release,
right?
And they just say this is in our portfolio.
Well,
and so expectations aren't properly aligned. Jack Daniel's also, as you mentioned, doesn't have 50 SKUs. You know,
Yeah.
Buffalo Trace, if you were to count up just in their whiskey portfolio, I'm not talking about everything Sazerac owns. I'm talking about just their whiskey portfolio and just at the Buffalo Trace distillery. If you keep out 1792 and the Bowman distillery, just Buffalo Trace, it could be close to 50 SKUs. It's at least 20. And that's the problem. Jack Daniel's doesn't have that. They've got the old number 7. They've got the single barrel releases, the cask strength, which, I mean, that's still the single barrel. They have the regular strength rye and Tennessee whiskey, and then the cask strength versions. Those are their staple products that you can buy.
And their innovation and their nod to hey, here's what we're doing on the side here for fun is those distiller series.
Now, once again, that's why I also separate Buffalo Trace from that, because then someone could come back and be like, well, it's Brown-Forman, and Brown-Forman has 50 SKUs, and it's I'm talking about the singular distillery, and that's why Buffalo Trace, Jack Daniel's is what I'm comparing. Old Forester obviously has a lot more stuff coming out than just the Jack Daniel's distillery, but they kind of live in their own world. They kind of live in their own vein, and I feel like the independent distilleries make a lot more insulated decisions than what happens with the Sazerac company. Different corporate structures, not saying one is wrong, but just one has happened to be a lot more, I would say, friendly to the enthusiast community than the other.
When I saw this release come out from Buffalo Trace and we were discussing oh my gosh, it's just another thing. Why don't they keep it whatever? I was like, man, how do I feel about that with a brand that I love and the integrity of the distillery is awesome is Jack Daniel's. But you're right. It's a different mentality. It's a different way. And they've got such few brands in comparison. I think that they're going to actually be able to push out a lot of that exclusive higher end limited release product as they move forward. I don't think that they're going to be 12-year toasted. You know what I mean?
And to be fair to Jack Daniel's, they had to work really hard to get the whiskey and bourbon community in their camp.
Yeah.
At the beginning of this bourbon boom, or even in the middle of this bourbon boom, it took years where Jack Daniel's wasn't on the radar. Because at the time...
That was your blue-collar go-to everyday drinker.
At the time, all they had that you could go buy was old number 7 on the shelf. When we started really doing this.
Well, they had Gentleman Jack.
Okay, sorry. I take that back. You're right. They
Gentleman Jack was pretty big.
And then they had a couple of the gold was a special release.
Yeah, gold Sinatra.
But they weren't everyday things. They weren't loved by the whiskey community by any means. And the opposite is that Buffalo Trace as a brand had everyone captivated, and they just kept going.
Yeah.
They just kept going. And once again, people will be like, because they're greedy. I don't buy that at all.
It's a business.
It's a business. They had opportunity. There's demand there. Clearly, people still buy out their products.
And because of that,
I don't think
they are well positioned to stomach this longer. As far as a bust is concerned, they're positioned to.
So I think that I don't think it's greed or anything like that. I just think that their strategy was, people like this, let's make something new. And that's creativity to some degree. Some people would argue with me. I don't really care. But the problem though is that and I'm speaking for a lot of people, it burned the consumer that loved to drink even just regular Buffalo Trace. People that like to drink their product. When I could go buy, Weller Special Reserve was everywhere in the little
Dude, I was getting bottles for $15.
Yeah, it was cheap. It was good. It was kind of like a secret. Man, this stuff's really good. And it's
nobody
cheap.
knew it was the same mash bill as Pappy, and as soon as that got out, it just started fluttering.
But when you look at that whole thing, is that the way, whether it was on purpose, not on purpose in a negative sense, but whether it was thought through or not, I do believe they thought they were giving the consumer what they wanted, but it burned a lot of consumers that could no longer just go buy their everyday product. Their everyday product was never meant to be a premium bottle. It was still meant to be a call bourbon that you could go pick up on the shelf and you can have at your house, and it's a quality, well-made product. That being said, the difference with Jack Daniel's is that they had to work very, very hard to break in to the whiskey enthusiast community. They had diehard Jack Daniel fans.
They're still doing it.
I mean,
Like
still
they're still in the process
doing
for sure.
it. But I would say that the leadership there understands
the Coy
that.
Hill changed the game.
I think it started happening before that.
Well, I'm saying
I think no. I
the
think
launch, the huge surge. I would argue that Coy Hill. I think it was Coy Hill.
I still go back to when people realized how good the barrel strength single barrels were. That is when people really started to buy into Jack Daniel's.
Right.
And they started
that came way early.
And they're like, this is what we wanted. They're giving us what we want. It's really good. And that really started to open the door for them. But then I agree, their special releases went from being like the Jack Daniel's Gold that wasn't super. Also, the Heritage Barrel. That was their very first
that's right.
limited release that was in that kind of decanter bottle that is the similar decanter bottle as the single barrel.
Is that the one with the malt?
No. There was a single malt that was, but then they started releasing those, and those became very popular, and it was catered to the whiskey enthusiast palate. And I think that once again, they put in the work, and they didn't start flooding. Then they're like, well, this worked. Let's put a bunch of different ones out at one time.
Well,
they still have their single annual single barrel series in that decanter release that's a special release once a year, and then they've started introducing the age series that is still not a everyday product. It's known this is a more limited release. We're going to try to get more out as we can, but they're working into it, and so I don't think people are going to get burned by them in the way that they were burned by some of the other brands.
Yeah. Well, so back in the day, I was thinking, okay, Buffalo Trace is creating, let's just use Weller, okay? They expanded the Weller line. Mm-hmm. Do you think that they were preemptively preparing for the hundreds of millions of dollars sunk into aging barrels of like, we're gonna have so much influx of whiskey that we need like places to throw it?
Yeah. I mean, this is purely speculative. That could be. I think it was a bad call. The way it was rolled out, I think they should have gotten their brands up to speed, and then when needed to get more stock out, do it that way. Because if you think about
Special Reserve, 6 years old, roughly?
Yeah.
OWA, very similar.
It's just higher proof.
Yeah.
That's the thing, too, is that they could have turned on these spigots whenever they wanted.
Yeah.
It's not like this one's aged an extra 10 years. The only one that currently, besides William LaRue, that's in the Weller line, and I exclude to the forthcoming 18-year because it's a different mash bill. It's a wheat whiskey. But the only one that has to be older is the 12-year. All the others are just manipulating proof. So they legitimately could have gotten 107 and Special Reserve back to a place where price demand equilibrium is supply demand equilibrium, the price equilibrium is there, and then they're like, we have excess stock, let's introduce a new label. That to me would have been smarter rather than being like, we've put the markers down, here's where we're eventually going to be able to funnel everything into, because once again, people are like, why are you giving me a new product when I can't get your product?
Yeah.
So
that's the biggest thing.
If that was their thought, and it certainly could have been, it wasn't a great thought.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people online, that's their first go-to. It's like, why are y'all doing that?
Yeah.
To argue my point as far as what I think that they were doing is kind of opening up brands to funnel a ton of whiskey coming in, is because it's not a different aged product stuff. Like, they haven't added an age to any of the new Weller lines. You had the 12 already established. The new stuff, bottled and bond, single barrel, full proof, all that. It's all the same proof.
Yeah. Well,
so now they don't have to logistically
all
figure
the same
it out.
age, not all the same proof.
Well,
all of them are different proofs.
All of them are different proofs, yes. But I'm just saying, like, as far as what the product is aging, the proof comes in when they're bottling it, right?
Right.
And so
that's
you
what
don't
I'm
have to
saying,
logistically change
that could
recipes
have been,
or anything.
That could have been their thought process. I'll give you that look, now we have places to funnel, but they didn't need places to funnel. I don't buy for a second that their entire brand strategy is scarcity. It doesn't make any sense.
No,
I think they could not keep up, and then they're making a poor marketing decision by adding new SKUs. But I don't think that they're all thinking we got to keep everything scarce. I don't think that that's a winning strategy, and I don't think that their board of directors and their CEO would say, I love this idea. No one's ever done this before. Let's make something people can't buy.
Yeah.
So
fix it.